Hey y'all, thanks for checking out the video. In this one I'll show you how I made this casing and the radiuses and the radius jamb that goes with it. Stay tuned. Beautiful cherry lumber. Okay, so here's what we're building. Right now, this will be our first part of the project here. We're going to start with building these arched walls. To give you some scale here, the overall height is 12 feet, and that's about 24 feet long overall. Obviously the tops of the doors here are at 10 feet. This crossbar is at about 8 feet high. That's kind of a hard and fast for the customer because they want to be able to hang TVs from there, and there's going to be an island here in front, so they want to get them up high enough. So the first thing we got to do here is we got to figure out our arches, and my job site measurements are as follows. You know, this right here, 5 3/4 out of the corner to the first opening, and I chose this left side because this is a corner in the building, and this was the most level. So if I pull all my measurements from here, then everything should play out. And on the far end over here, I can provide them with a piece that will scribe into the corner. Plus, there's another set of panels. This is the opposite wall that comes out. So scribing here isn't going to be as crucial. But with this corner being nice and plumb and really straight, I called that 0. So got a 36-inch wide opening. That's my rough framing opening. So I have to go down inside of that. Okay, so since I'm staying inside of 36 inches, I have to shrink everything down, and to give them enough room to kind of adjust things and whatnot, the outer diameter of the arch is going to be 35 inches. That'll give them a ½ inch of shim space, and they can level things out that way and without having to worry about the door. If it's more than a ½ inch out, which it's not, then you know, they're going to have to do something with the framing. So let me show you what I've done so far. This is kind of hard to see with the glare, but I laid all of this out on the plywood here, just lofted it out. This first line here is my door jamb, where it comes out. This next line right next to it, that's my casing. And then this is my panel rail that's above that. Just like you see in the drawing right here. Even though there's only a single line here, you know, I'm not that good with SketchUp, so this drawing is more of an artist interpretation more than anything to build by. So anyway, here's my panel rail, and then up here is the panel itself. Now, getting all of this to work together is kind of complicated. So what I did is I took my router, which I've got on a compass jig, and I cut out a bunch of templates. Show y'all what those look like. So here's the casing that I cut out, and it matches up to what I drew on here real well. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's right on the line, especially when I put it where it's supposed to be. And then here's my paneling rail. Now the stack goes the other way, but just to kind of give y'all an idea of how these things nest together. So these are my square lines so that I have a reference for when I go back to cut these later, that I'll know where to put that. And I continued the circle like this because I'm going to have to run these through the shaper to put a profile on them when I build the pieces. So this is going to be my template for shaping the pieces, and my reference for cutting the pieces to the correct size. These arched door openings are going to go as a single piece, to where when the customer's installer gets them, all he's got to do is just trim the bottom off to fit the floor. So that's where we're at. The first step is to start cutting veneers to glue up and make the arches. Just thought I'd do a little update here on how well the cyclone that I built in the last video is working. You can see here, even the super fine dust is getting sorted and not just getting blown out into the airstream. It's get blown around a little here and there, landing on the edges. It doesn't stay in as well as the heavier chips do, but still, I'm real impressed with how well everything is getting sorted by the cyclone. Totally passive machine. Okay, off camera I got first arch clamped up. I used Total Boat Slow Epoxy. It should give me almost no spring back. So, but the thing about it is, if you use epoxy, you got 45 minutes to get your piece into clamps, but you're waiting overnight to take it out of clamps. So while we're waiting on this to dry, I'll start working on making my my other parts, my casing blanks and the blanks for the lower rail on the panels. And we'll do that next. Just real quick so that y'all can see how I constructed this. I've got a 1.25 inch hole drilled through the plywood. So I got a place to anchor, hook my clamps to, and then my lower part, that's a straight. The lower 6 inches of this, below this line, is actually square. And that gives me an easier transition point to make the joint between the straight casing and this radius glue up. Okay, this is how I'm figuring out my parts for my radius casing. Got my template here. So what I did is I started from 0 cut me a couple of square lines. This is 6 inches up. This is basically my waist. This line here is where I intend to cut at when it's all said and done. This leaves room for the for chatter and ugly to be cut off in the end after I have run this through the shaper and get a profile on it. Anyway, 2 square lines. I have my centers and my cutoff lines marked out here so that I can set this up accurately, and then I traced out my cut template. Then what I've got here is I took my blanks and I set them up on here like so, and traced out my lines, making sure that these are nice and square. Up here at the top, I did more or less the same thing. It's square to my horizontal. At that point, then what I can do is I can take this and set it on this angle here, and this is a 45 because I'm covering 180 degrees of the circle, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 joints, and so 180 divided by 4 is 45, and then half of 45 is 22 and a half, so I know that's what my miters are. So I can take this piece, get it to where it's covering what's left of my arch, using the square to hold it on the angle that I want, and then move it until it's covering like I want it to. And now I have my measurements. I know that I can cut this one from square to short. There's my short to short measurement, and then my short to short measurement up here. Everything's nice, easy peasy. Here's my setup for doing the joinery. Got the miter gauge here, my shaper cutter. This thing is really just an overgrown router table, but it's a lot more substantial, a lot more versatile. What I intend to do here is I'll have 2 of my parts to essentially be male, and the other 3 parts in the arch to be female. So right now I'm set up to make my male cuts. So this part right here, move this out of the way. The bottom of this shaper cutter is, rough guess, about 3/8. I want to go down a little bit, I think, above the height of the table to where it'll cut away the top. And then whenever I set up to do the other end, I'll do the opposite. It'll cut away the bottom. I only want to make these about 5/16 thick. I want to leave myself 1/16 to mill off of the bottom so I can get everything nice and flat after I glue these together, and then be able to run the profile on the face side. And hopefully I can keep it to where the overall thickness of my part, the overall thickness of the finished part of the profile is above the joinery. That way we don't have any weird lines going through the face of cases. So to make sure that I can do that, I've made a bunch of practice pieces. I've actually got a decent little stack that I cut out so that I have a few chances at getting this right. I can kind of get this dialed in to where whenever I do my assembly, then it'll all just kind of click together. Fingers crossed. always go below and then come up to your finished height. That way if there's any slack in the adjustment mechanism, you're taking it out, gravity keeps that from getting bad on you. Pretty good right there. Just a touch more. Right there. Now I can take a couple of my setup pieces, make a practice cut or two, to make sure that everything fits together. Alright, this is my setup piece from before. Pretty good fit. Nice and closed inside. So now I know I'm good to go. Alright, so this is how these miters are going to be put together. It's a little bit of a process here. So, obviously, a little bit of glue. You didn't see that coming, did you? I've got these oriented to where the back side is up. I'm not too worried about clamp marks or anything else because all of this is going to be surfaced again. So, get that on there. Good squeeze out, wipe off some of the excess. I'm going to use these. These are called pinch dogs. And really it's just two nails with a bar hook holding them together. I want to be, the inside of the circle is going to be the thinner side. So I want to keep these towards the thicker spot. You can see it, even after I wiped it off, I had a fair amount of squeeze out show up. Because the way these are angled forces them together. But it does a pretty crappy job on the vertical axis. So I have to get some more clamps. And put pressure on that axis to get these faces flush. You know, my finished thickness on this stuff is going to be 3/4, and right now it's like a heavy 7/8. So I've got a lot of room to work with. Now, the other part of the problem with this method is the way the pinch dogs work. They actually pull on the back side of this to where it's trying to open the face. So you can see when I put my straight edge on here, I've got a fair amount of rock. But all I got to do is put a couple more clamps on it. Get it flat. When I get pressure on both ends of this board here, I actually should get a little bit more squeeze out in the joint. So now this board will hold it nice and flat while the glue dries. Rinse, repeat. And then what I'll do is I'll build sections at a time. And then, you know, the last one, that's going to be the kind of the pain. I'll have to build like a little block setup in here to hold the entire arch up. But step one. Okay, this is how I like to do my radiuses. Got a rub collar here. That's the same diameter as the cutter head, so it's a flush trim router bit essentially. When I got to do a radius, you see this back side right here where I got my thumb. That's my rest spot. I can put my template against that and then ease it into the cutter and make my cut. The nice thing about a big router head like this, shaper head, is that I can get away with a little more meat on the edge of my frickin' template. You know, you got to be within an eighth a lot of times where, you know, because I'm taking such a large diameter cutter head, this isn't as critical as it is with a router. Okay, this is my cradle to make my put my profile on my casings. I haven't made my my straight stuff yet because it's easier to make the straight match whatever comes off of here than to go the other way, because, you know, physics and stuff. But anyway, I have a center line marked right here. And that's what I want to line up with the highest point of my knife in there. So what I need to do for now is just bring it in there to where it just touches it. And right there, the knife is just rubbing on the back side of the cradle. So that's where I want it. I don't really want to take any thickness off of this thing, because the two sides of the fence are not aren't adjustable. So I've got a single plane. So if I take any off of here, this won't behave like a joiner. And so because it'll be unsupported on this side out here, then what will happen is right here I'm taking off, let's just say a 32nd when I first start. But because it keeps dropping in and dropping in and dropping in on this side, I'm taking off the 32nd when I start, a full 16th on the other end, which is no good. So now I need to adjust the height of my knife, and what I want is for the top of the profile to be about a 16th of an inch above the finish of the casing. This is why I made several pieces. I made 3 short test pieces, so that, you know, I can practice with this thing, getting it dialed in like I want it. Then I got one extra full-size piece for that last tweak. And then I've got the 4 pieces that I need. So I have 1 extra and 3 to set up with. And I wish I could afford to make more than that. So to start with, I'll raise my knife because it's not the correct height. All right. Now I can do a little test run. I want to show y'all what I did here. You can probably just make out right here. That is my lap joint. All of this is meant to be profile. What I'm going to attempt to do is get that have that lap joint end up just below the profile. So we'll see how that works out. But I can tell by right here. Zoom in a little bit, maybe y'all can see it. You can see where the top of the knife is here. So that's as deep as the knife will cut right there. And that's going to leave me around a 32nd of an inch, give or take, of material. And I think I can bump that out just a touch. We'll see. I have a test piece. Make this one run. I can adjust my depth as needed and then move forward. Alright, as you can see, this was my first setup.
right through here, and it was leaving just a little line. And I adjusted the fence to where it's just shaving it. It's not cutting deep enough to leave a line behind right now. So the next step is to get the power feeder hooked up, set up properly, which in itself is pretty cool.
As you can see, that's a pretty clean cut. It's good looking radius casings. Had a couple of joints show some open here and there, but nothing too major. I got some chatter on the ends, but I was expecting that. It's kind of hard to keep it perfectly consistent all the way. But you know, I made these over length so I could cut that off. Alright, I think that's going to do it for this video. Y'all, thanks for watching. If you found it entertaining or informative or whatever, please like and subscribe. I really appreciate it. These arches came together pretty good. I really like working with cherry. And shout out to Woodworker Source. That's who I bought this cherry from, and this stuff has been exemplary to work with. Almost very few knots, very few checks, and nice and flat. Now, I ordered it at 15/16 to leave me room for the jointer, and so far I haven't really needed it, which has been awesome. That saved a bunch of time. Anyway, next up we'll be doing the panels that go on the rest of the wall with this. But I'm going to leave these aside for now. It's easier to store them in pieces like this than to go ahead and build it, because there's a lot of work to build the panels, and these get integrated into the panels. But I had to figure this out first so I could figure out the panels. It's a daisy chain of stuff. Anyways, stay tuned, and I'll be showing you the panel process and making them up. Thanks for watching.